first fucking try. It's okay. It's okay. Man, she heals for. I'm Swarm, and I'm gonna talk about the difficulty in Elden Ring. Now, this is a topic that has been discussed many times, but I'm gonna share my own personal and maybe unique thoughts on it. I think Elden Ring is probably one of the easiest From Software game there is. However, I do feel like the game does a terrible job at times at leading the player in the right direction. I'm gonna start by talking about why I feel like it's one of the easiest, why I feel like if you've been avoiding Dark Souls game because of the difficulty, you should maybe pick it up. But I'm also going to talk about the traps you must avoid as a new player if you feel the game is too hard. So to begin, I feel like Elden Ring is pretty easy for a few reasons. The difficulty of Dark Souls games has often been defined by how viable many of the builds are. Let's take a look at Dark Souls 1. With the builds with the shield and the lightning spear or the dragon sword. Those were pretty good and considered the easy mode of the game. Next up we have Dark Souls 2 and the weird ADP build, which stood for adaptability, which was a stat they added only for this game because it added some invincibility frames to the dodge rolls. That means if you just leveled this thing up to like 25, you were pretty much invincible all the time. All you had to do was just keep rolling. This was once again considered the easy mode. In Dark Souls 3, there was the twin blade that you could buff with weapon, grease, and stuff like that. That was also very strong. This was considered the easy mode. Once again, that and the S-Stock. Bloodborne didn't really have an easy mode, I feel it, because it kind of restrained you in what you were able to do. Same thing with Sekiro, you couldn't change your weapon or anything, so the options to break the game were a lot less present. So why do I feel like Elden Ring is easy then? Well, because all of those builds are still kind of present in Elden Ring. They made the game as big as they could, and that implies that all of those builds are now there. And I can name you a single build that is very strong for any single kind of build you're doing. Like I said, the shield is really good still in this game. They added a guard counter, so if you want to do a strength or a dex build that solidifies itself with a shield, this is a thing you can do. If you want to do a 2-weapon power stancing, the jump attacks misses a lot of the boss's hitbox while the landing lag is active. If you don't understand a single word I said, that's fine. Basically, you can attack them without being punished with a really strong attack. That makes it insanely powerful. If you're doing the dex build, the bleed weapons are insanely strong. If you're doing sorcery in itself is just completely broken as we've seen. And if you're doing the fate build, I think miracle are as good or a little bit worse than sorcery. They're still pretty up there though. So there you have it. This is pretty much why I feel like Elden Ring is easy. It's because it allows you to do pretty much whatever you want while staying viable. And that's a really important part of the game. I feel they want you to feel strong, but that also means that the balancing of the game has kind of been wonky in a certain way. They don't want the game to feel too easy in a way, I feel. Not in the early game and not in the late game. The mid game is kind of free for all, and I've got to say I've probably one-shotted most of the boss in the mid game, and that's fine because I had fun doing it. But once I got to the late game and to the optional path, I feel like they made sure the bosses were challenging for any type of build. Now, that is completely fine for the optional path, because if you're getting there, if you're going to Melania, if you're going to the Dragon Lord, you know what you're getting into, okay? Don't look at me and tell me you're sad these bosses are too hard. I fought Melania, it took me like an hour, and I had so much fun doing it. It was probably one of the best Dark Souls bosses I've played in my recent memory, so there you have it. The reasons I think the game is a little bit wonky when it comes to balancing is because the early game is really confusing for new players. Now, I know what the game wanted me to do from the get-go because I've played a lot of From Software. I've explored all I can do. I've killed every single enemy at least once to prepare myself for bosses. But the game, when you start, basically tells you, hey, follow the lights. And the lights bring you to the weird ambush with the troll that jumps up from the place, and that's where you're like, oh shit, this game is real now, you know? And it's just really hard for a lot of people. Right after this ambush, you have another one, and then you have Margaret the Fell, which is the first real boss of the game for many people, and I feel like it's a really, really tough one. You cannot tell me Margaret the Fell is as hard as the Asylum Demon or anything like that, because I just won't believe you. This boss is really hard, and I feel like they're sending the wrong message. Obviously, to me, the game was like, hey, this boss is hard. You're not gonna be able to kill it on your own right now. It's gonna take you a lot of tries. So what you can do instead of wasting your time on this guy is waste your time exploring. You know, you're not gonna lose anything. You're not gonna progress any slower, because by the time you get this boss, you could have been like a few levels higher, or you could have gotten more cool equipment or stuff like that. So I explored. I got stronger, much stronger, might I add, and I destroyed the boss with magic and summons and everything, all that good stuff. But I have a friend who played the game. She's not that great at Dark Souls games, and she kind of hit her head for 16 hours, I think, was it, on Margaret, which is insane to me. And kudos to her. She got him, and she got much better at the game in the meantime, and it kind of was like a anime training arc moment, and now she doesn't have any problem with the game. But it's still kind of insane that some people do this, right? And I feel like that's all because the game is like, hey, follow these lights, the beaming beacon that there was none in the last few games. And I feel like people would have explored more if there was no signal of light. I get what they're trying to do. I just feel like the light signals at the beginning of the game are kind of unjustified. Add them later on if you feel like people are having trouble follow the story or something. That's totally fine. I'm not gonna shit on you guys for this, but I just feel like in the early game they kind of destroyed their own purpose, if you will. In the late game, I feel like poise should be more of a thing if you've built tanky. I've noticed a really small difference between my character and other people's character. The problem is that my character was made to be frail. I expected to die in like 2 hits from any bosses past the mid game, which would normally happen, but I dealt like an amazing amount of damage. The problem is I felt like people who were having build much stronger than me just died in maybe 3 hits more than me, and that's not that much when you think about stuff like in Dark Souls 1 when you would wear Havel's armor in the Four Kings fight and you would just mash R1 and your poise would literally never break. And I feel like in this game poise is a lot less important. And I understand they did this to make the game kind of harder on you, but at the same time I truly feel like they should not have done this. I truly feel like poise was something that was cool and you just kind of needed. Maybe they were scared it would be too OP, and it very well might have been. But at this point, with the amount of OP stuff that's in the game, I feel like you should have just let it rip, brother. But that's my opinion. So yeah, there you have it. My opinion on Elden Ring and its difficulty. Do I think it's hard? Hell yeah. You can find your own challenge. It's not gonna find you, however. If you go to the optional area, if you go to the optional bosses that you don't need to fight, they're brutal, man. But they're brutal in a really good way. I think this is the peak of what Dark Souls boss should be, or From Software Games boss should be. Stuff like Melina, which is really hard because she doesn't give you too much window to heal. She has really good range. The fight is good. She has one-shot mechanics. She has really strong chaining attack that you need to learn the pattern to dodge effectively. You also, on the other hand, have stuff like Dragon Lord, which I don't remember the name completely, which is insanely hard for different reasons. He teleports all over the place, he calls down status effect and elements to you, and it's hard for another reason, right? It's hard because he has a lot of health, it's a fight of attrition, and you kind of gotta learn everything because you're not gonna cheese this guy. This guy is not gonna be cheesed because he has too much HP no matter what you do, and that felt really, really good to me. That felt like I was learning the fight and it wasn't too punishing, But once again, the fight would just one-shot me, which was fine to me, but I feel like to many people was not, right? So do I feel like the game is good? Yes. Do I feel like it's gonna be easy if you're an experienced From Software player? Yeah. Yeah, I do think you're gonna have an easier time, especially if you're going for one of the strong build. I do recommend, if you feel like the game is too easy, to just respec to something that's less hard. That's another thing in the game. The game lets you respec anytime you want past Lunaria, I think is the name of the place, and that's really good. Is the game going to be hard if you're a new player? Yes, if you don't take the time to explore, to farm, to breathe, to take everything under control, right? The moment you start panicking is the moment the game is going to be hard on you. It doesn't forgive you doing anything, right? It's not going to be forgiving, but it can be really fun. I've had a lot of people come to me and be like, hey, it's my first From Software game and I'm having a blast. I'm thinking about going back to stuff like Bloodborne, which I picked up like when it came out and played for 10 minutes and never picked up again, you know? And a lot of my friends are playing it. They're not the best at gaming, but they're having a blast, you know? So pick it up if you want, but it's hard. The best thing I can say is do a little bit of research. Try to not spoil yourself too much, but do a little bit of research on what the game is. The last thing you want is buying the game, finding it boring as hell, and then not being able to bring it back. That's my thought for now. What do you think about the difficulty of the game? Do you think it's hard? Do you think it's too easy? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think they did a wonky job like me at some space? You know, the most important things for me is consistency in those kind of games. And I feel like the consistency is good if you take like the difficulty of the early game, the difficulty of the mid game, and the difficulty of the late game. But if you put the whole thing together, I feel like it goes like kind of hard, super easy, pretty hard. And I think for new players that's going to be a little bit unconcerning, because most people will either quit before the mid game or quit right after. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to know more. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with some live stream, challenge run, whatever the hell I feel like doing. See you.